The Tampa Bay Lightning did not reach the Stanley Cup Final for the first time in a while last year, and they've made some changes in the offseason. Adam Denker of Locked On Lightning is here to talk about those changes and how they'll affect the Bolts this year. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. And you can also find us now on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just do a search for Locked On NHL. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Lightning, Adam Denker. And Adam, an interesting offseason for Tampa Bay. A lot of changes, especially among the depth players. Out of all the players that they lost, who is the biggest concern that it'll be difficult to replace?
Well, I think we could both agree probably the obvious choice here is Alex Killorn. There was talk for not just this season, but the last couple of seasons, if the Lightning were not going to get a deal done, which we kind of all assumed was going to be the case, who was going to slide into his shoes? The Lightning, as we all know, the last couple of years have had and have been able to enjoy players sliding into new roles, like the Nick Pauls, Mikey Eyssimont last offseason, to name a more recent one. But I think we were all surprised, though, Gil, when Connor Sheary was signed, sliding into that second line role. And he's going to add something that we already got from Killorn, and that was that leader mentality. As we all know, Sheary, through his time in Pittsburgh, he's been to the Stanley Cup Finals. He's won it. He knows what it takes to get there. And he adds a little bit more of scoring, which, we're excited to have. Killorn was kind of a jack of all trades, but with Sheary, you kind of have a guy who is going to be able to find a way to score where and whenever he can, and also make the players around him better.
Well, that definitely helps, and it's a good addition. How about Pat Maroon? I mean, as someone who's been covering the Islanders, he was always a thorn in our side, especially in those playoff series. Who do you think that they've brought in who can replace Maroon in that sort of a sandpaper agitator kind of role?
Well, we already had Mikey Eyssimont from last year. Him along with Tanner Jeannot, who I think we could all agree, X amount of games in the second half of the season isn't exactly going to be, the tell-all for what Tanner Jeannot's tenure with the Lightning is going to be. But as we all know, at the end of the day, even though he's not going to score points, he's still going to go out there and he's going to be able to throw his body around and his weight around on the ice. And also with the offseason additions, the Lightning also bring in Calvin DeHaan. They also have the leader defenseman in Zach Bogosian, who is no stranger to Lightning fans, was with the Lightning when they won in 20, came back after a brief tenure in Toronto. So, it's not so much it was a concern when Maroon was traded away. I think it was more so that we had a plethora of guys that could be kind of the sandpaper guys. So, that's obviously not a bad problem to have.
The Lightning went to 3 straight Stanley Cup Finals, won 2 of them. This past year, the season ended a lot earlier. The team will be more rested as a result. Do you think going to the Stanley Cup Final 3 years in a row did tire this team out last year? And how much do you think the extra rest will make a difference?
Well, absolutely. I mean, you saw it from opening night against the Blackhawks last season, how tired this team was. And they did some things that, you could always kind of look the other way on physical mistakes, maybe not cutting off the angle on a puck down the board, or, not picking up a guy down low. But, the one thing that really stood out with this team, really from the get-go last season, was really the mental mistakes and really not being able to get into the flow of the game early on. The Lightning, I think, were one of the most notorious teams in the league at being slow starters. So, this team, to say that they were tired, after going to the Stanley Cup Final. And let's remember, Gil, they went to the Stanley Cup Final twice in the span of 9 months and won both times. So the fact that they did it in 3 years, twice in 9 months, to say that this team was tired was definitely an understatement. I was actually one of the few that was really almost kind of, I wouldn't say, I mean, you never want to wish for your team to lose, but I kind of felt like if I had to pick one or the other, whether the Lightning making a deep run and not winning the Stanley Cup or having an early exit, I say that to my listeners, it kind of caused a little bit of a rift there for a little bit. I was the more so in the camp of if you're going to lose early so you get as much rest as possible. You saw it from top to bottom, especially Vasilvskiy in the playoffs, and you kind of saw it in that Leafs series. He was just kind of pretty much overwhelmed. He was tired, but you saw obviously as the series went on, he gets better. I mean, that's just what we come to expect from him. He's one of the best in the world. But you're going to see a very rejuvenized Lightning team this season. And really, you're going to see a lot of, even though the faces might be a little bit different with this Lightning team, you're going to see a lot more of the same that what you saw from those championship teams a couple of years ago.
You mentioned Vasilevskiy. Ideally, how many games would you want him to start this year? And who do you think fills in as the backup?
Well, the Lightning picked up, they had a really good pickup this offseason. They got Jonas Johansson, a veteran in the league. And I say that, very timidly. He's 27. So I guess, old, maybe by NHL standards, who knows, depending on who you're talking to. But ideally, I would say the magic number for Vasilevskiy is probably 43. 45, I think, is kind of pushing it. Some Lightning fans would probably want a little bit more closer to 50. I think that, last year we saw Cooper really push the limit with Vasilevskiy, and it wasn't like this team didn't need him to go out there. This team struggled really all season, and having Vasilevskiy out there, even though he struggled just as much, was an added plus in especially in the big tight games for the Tampa Bay Lightning team. But you could see there were certain points during the season where he just had nothing left. And really that coupled with the Lightning's defensive issues at times, really, you could see it really got Vasilevskiy down. But I think that Cooper is probably going to rein him in a little bit this season. You're not going to see him, really just jump out of the gates going. I think he's really going to throw Johansson out there, not only to give Vasilevskiy rest, but to also give Johansson some looks, because there was times last season where, we had Elliott out there, and, as good as a backup Elliott was, going out there for 9 starts isn't really going to do much for you. And he was cold at times as well. So I think Cooper really seeing that as a learning experience for him. He's definitely going to probably, I'm not saying that we're going to have a 2-goalie system in Tampa Bay, but it's as close as you're going to get to one.
Should be interesting, and hopefully that means Vasilevskiy is rested and ready for the postseason. Adam, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Well, as always, the podcast is available in audio form wherever podcasts are distributed. And you can follow us on our YouTube page as well, and follow us on Twitter. It's been a while since we talked, Gil. I don't know what we're calling it at this point, but you could, regardless of what you call it, you can find the podcast on Twitter, X at L_Lightning, and Locked_Lightning on Instagram, and follow me at Danky DNKYD8NK. We'll be previewing the season. We just got some extensions signed. The Lightning are spending money, so that's really, really positive thing to see. So we're talking about all that as we get ever closer to October.
Yeah, season just around the corner. I know you'll have it all covered on Locked On Lightning. Adam, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Always a
today.
Pleasure to be on, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel, the app that is easy to use, and you can be on everything from point spreads to player props and more. And hey, with NFL Sunday Ticket, you could follow any of the 32 NFL teams regardless of where you live. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.